Good evening and welcome. My name is Paul Brooks. I am the current Vice President of Education for the Gilead Laverne Toastmasters Club for this year, as well as your District 12 Area A2 Area Director. Now, many of you know me or have run into me at some point during this last year during one of our District 12 events where I have served as your District 12 techie. That person who always seems to be at most district functions, helping to ensure that our technology portion of our meetings and events runs smoothly. Because so many of you have seen me in that role, I've gotten many calls and emails over the past couple months as clubs are looking to move from having remote meetings and start to coming back into a central meeting location, because the new word that's all the buzz around the district is hybrid. That brings a possibility for many clubs to engage the best of both worlds, because many of us have seen there is some benefit to being able to meet from home, such as easier to work into your schedule, easier to meet without compromising health and safety, or just ability to meet and join either different district events or even different club meetings for maybe some clubs you never would have been able to attend otherwise. But as people are looking to move back into a central meeting place, many clubs are finding that their members are looking to take a balance. They don't want to go all the way back. Well, let me clarify. Many clubs are looking to strike a balance. Many clubs really want to get back together, but also want to make sure they're doing so safely and balance some of the benefits they found by being able to attend meetings remotely, such as having guest speakers, having people visit their club, as well as, again, balancing life, because sometimes life happens and you can't make it to a meeting on time at a physical location, but you're able to phone in. Or you hear of a club who has a really great guest speaker coming that evening, and it's somebody you want to hear, and now being able to attend remotely gives you that possibility to visit a new club or to hear a speaker you're really interested in seeing, or supporting some of your friends, or maybe someone you're mentoring as a mentor, and supporting that person as they engage in their Toastmasters journey. Now, since many people recognize me as being one of the tech-savvy people in the district, I've received many calls over the past 1 to 2 months of clubs asking, Paul, can you help us determine how we can go hybrid? Or can you come to our meeting or attend remotely and show us all the different technology options that are available to help us go hybrid? Actually, even just this evening, I received a message from one club asking for a list of the different equipment I've used and I've demonstrated at their club meeting, which I attended last week remotely. But rather than just provide it to that one club or that those 2 or 3 clubs I visited, I thought maybe I can help out more clubs and make this content available to the district at large for those who are interested. So this evening, I thought I would give a short demo of the technology that I have used or have learned to use over this past year, that I've used both at my Toastmasters meeting as well as for my work, for my regular day-to-day job, and for a small hobby I've developed over the past year, which is doing a video blogging series, which I've called The Quarantine Bakery. In that I demonstrated and found a way to deal with a little bit of quarantine by coming right here next to my kitchen and determining what can I bake with what I already have in my pantry and fridge, and then filming it and posting it on a couple social media sites. It's been very successful, and my video just from this past month, where I made a fresh peach pie with fresh peaches in the summer, just at work alone, has gathered, just surpassed over 10,000 views by employees at my company. So I've really enjoyed doing that, and if you're interested in seeing it, you can see some selected episodes on YouTube just by searching for the channel Quarantine Bakery. Building upon what I've learned in that video blogging series and working for my own Toastmasters club, and of course helping out the District 12 in our events, I thought I'd take a few minutes this evening to share some of the technology options I've used and to demonstrate how you might use those in your club meeting. So, if you'll join me for just a few minutes, we will get started and dive into some technology. So, before I get into looking at specific pieces of technology that you can see arranged on the table here behind me, I thought I'd talk about a meeting model for hybrid meetings. Again, that's a way that I hope we can help think and make sense of how does our club go hybrid? How do we engage both our members who might come on site, if we can do so safely, as well as those who are coming and attending remotely. So if you allow me just a moment, let me put something up on the screen and we'll look at this model. All right, so welcome back. I've changed over some camera just a little bit, and I put up on the screen a model I've been working on to develop to help try to explain when you're looking to develop a plan for taking your Toastmasters club and going hybrid, what do you need to think of? So I broke this down into two main categories: considerations for your on-site attendees, as well as considerations for your remote attendees. And then you'll notice for each group, I've defined the same four categories of technology that we're going to have to consider. And those are video out, audio out, video in, and audio in. Now, these four categories represent the main things you need to consider and fill in with the proper technology. So what do I mean by this? When we're talking about on-site attendees, let's look at the left half of this diagram. We first think about how are we going to broadcast our meeting content out to people who are attending remotely. So that's where that video and audio out comes in. We're thinking about broadcasting our on-site performer or our speaker who is attending. We need some way to both capture their video as well as to capture their audio and send it out. And maybe also we consider, do we want to or do we need to capture our on-site audience? Perhaps people who are watching the speaker and who might be contributing. We all know in Toastmasters, we don't just have one person who contributes during a meeting. We are all involved in putting on a great meeting. And for an off-site attendee to really get the sense of what's happening, maybe we need to consider how do we broadcast when our on-site audience does something, both their audio and video. Now, conversely, we also need to think about any of remote attendees. How are we going to bring their video in and their audio in to that on-site audience? Again, we're talking about remote performers or speakers, remote presentation content, maybe a slide presentation someone is sharing, as well as just general remote audience. We all know that while it can be very nerve-wracking to speak in front of an audience and to see how they're reacting to how we're speaking, sometimes it's even more nerve-wracking just to be staring at a blank camera where you don't know, are people enjoying what I'm saying, or are they really displeased and I'm losing them? So we need to think, is bringing in something like our remote speaker, remote audience, as well as remote presentation content is going to be necessary to have a full meeting experience. Now, conversely, on the right half of the diagram, we have our remote attendees. Again, same four categories. I'm not going to go into each of those. I'll just point out a few differences. You'll see most of the categories are similar. But the thing we now need to consider that a remote attendee, we need to be able to interface them both with the people who are on site at our central meeting location, as well as other off-site people who might be presenting. So, keeping all these categories in line, video out, audio out, video in and audio in order to have a full meeting experience, we need to make sure both groups of people have the technology they need in order to address each of these 4 categories. So, now coming back to the main show, with that model in mind, let's start thinking about what we're all very familiar with right now. After we've all been working from quarantine or attending our meetings remotely, let's look at what a potential model looks like from a remote attendee's perspective. And I'm going to start there because I think that's what most of you would be familiar with. So let me pull up my screen. So in this diagram, I'm showing a sample of a meeting setup that maybe most of us should be familiar with from this past year. Here's an attendee attending a meeting, their Toastmasters meeting remotely. On their desk, they have some type of base system like a desktop, a laptop, a tablet, or smartphone that serves as their base and runs all their applications. Speaking of applications, they have access to some type of video conferencing application for either hosting or attending the meeting, such as Zoom is the most popular probably right now, but there's others like WebEx, Microsoft Teams, Facebook Live, among others. In order to get their video into the application and bring it into the meeting, this person's using a webcam. Here I show it as a standalone web camera, but this might be a built-in camera into their base system. They have some type of monitor for getting their video out of the meeting so they can see the content, either another speaker or something being shared. To get their audio into the presentation, they are wearing some type of microphone. Here you see them depicted with some type of headset that broadcasts their sound into the meeting, as well as their laptop has some built-in speakers that gets the audio out of the meeting. Also, they have whatever applications they might need, perhaps a PowerPoint, a Word, an Acrobat, or an internet browser in order to share content or view the meeting minutes, view the agenda. Every setup and every person is going to need some type of cables and adapters, something as simple as a power cord to plug in, but also if they happen to be using something else, they might need a cable to connect their headset to their system or something like that. And then finally, whatever accessories they choose to use, such as a mouse or a keyboard in order to interface with the system. So while this setup is pretty familiar to all of us, I just wanted to point this out in order to emphasize the different pieces and how they fit into that model I shared a moment ago. So I hope that image is familiar to most of you, but I decided I wanted to share it because I wanted to break down what many of you have been using over the past year with yourself in your clubs, or you've seen us use at the District 12 events, just to see all the different pieces that you've had available or that you've been using and how they contribute to your full experience at the meeting. Now, when we take that and we start applying it to a group setting or your group setting in your in-person meeting, it starts to get a little more complicated. Because rather than just having a camera that's in front of me, facing me, I now have to consider, how am I going to get the video of everybody in the group? How am I going to capture their audio? If someone's right in front of the computer like I am right now, it might be pretty simple. But what if you have an attendee who's keeping their social distance sitting 6 feet away or more from your base system? How do you capture the audio and broadcast it into the meeting software so that everybody attending remotely can benefit from it? As you can see, it starts getting a little more complicated. So I just want to introduce that to take what you already know, but also to think of how can we modify this and use different technology options in order to maximize the benefit of our meeting. So I thought for the rest of this video, I would take the opportunity to demonstrate some different technology options. Again, going through what I have behind me here on the table to demonstrate how you might be able to engage your club in a cohesive hybrid setup, one that engages both your audience on site as well as make sure those attending remotely can get the full experience of your Toastmasters meeting. So, if you'll indulge me in just a little bit, I'll present some of these options and also add some questions that maybe you and your club can think about as you make your plan. All right, so for this second half of the video, I'm going to begin on demonstrating some different technology options for you and your club to consider, and I thought maybe I'd stand up to get a little more energy into it. Let's begin. First, let's talk about getting video into your system. Again, otherwise known as a camera. Different ways that you can get video into your system in order to broadcast it out to your remote attendees, or if you're a remote attendee, how you're going to get your content and your speech and presentation into the main meeting wherever it's taking place. So first option is something that maybe you use out of your base system, and that's your laptop camera. If you give me a moment, I'm going to transition this video over to laptop camera to demonstrate what that might look like. All right, so here's option one. This is the built-in web camera that's in my laptop. Again, this is just my laptop I have for my work. Pretty basic, pretty simple, but you can see it's a little bit limited in its quality, and of course, as I'm a speaker and I start to move around, it becomes a little more difficult to arrange this, but great built-in option, something that most of you have available if you're using a laptop at your meeting site to help with your meeting. So, potential option, something you could use here. All right, so before I switch over the camera, I thought I'd show you my second option. So the second option is getting a dedicated webcam. Again, this is a web camera. This is the Logitech C930E. It costs about $130 rough when I was just looking up this evening to get a rough price for the current value. As you can see, a little more compact. Here I have it mounted on a small tripod that I found on the internet. Again, this tripod was maybe about $10 to $12 when I found it. A little flexible, allows me to mount it on a table or even bend it around a bar or something like that. But here's this type of camera. Benefit, I can pan up and down, I can focus it where I need to, or if I do need quick privacy, I can always close the flap on the front. So let me transition back to this camera so you can see the difference between the built-in laptop camera and this dedicated web camera. All right, now we've transitioned back to that web camera. Again, this is that dedicated web camera I was just showing you just a moment ago. We can see on this one, the picture is a little bit wider. I can move around a little bit more. And if I had to, and I had to have a operator and maybe multiple people speaking around the room, if this was the place where most of the team was meeting, I could have someone manipulate that camera just a little bit easier. So potential option, but a little more expensive. Another option I want to review is what many people already have, and that's their smartphone. Again, many smartphones have built-in cameras in the back, which if you're trying to capture someone in person at a meeting, you could have a dedicated operator turn on their video camera on their smartphone, join your Zoom meeting or whatever platform you're using, and have it point at the speaker as they're talking and move around a little bit. Again, benefit, likely someone in your club already has this, so you may not have to purchase it at the club. Some downsides, getting very jerky if people are having to move it very quickly, and your remote attendees might get a little dizzy, but it also just might be a good option just because your club might not have to purchase anything extra. All right, now that we've talked about the video, now let's transition to the next portion, and that is to talk about our audio. And first I'm going to focus about how do we get audio into the system. several different options exist. The first I'm going to point out is the one I've been using up until now in this presentation, and that is a professional wireless microphone. Again, this is something I got when I started doing my video blogging series at the start of the pandemic, and I've definitely gotten my use out of it. It consists of a transceiver that's plugged into the computer right now and a little pack that you can see clipped here on my belt. Now I can either just use this pack just as is and talk right into it because the top of the microphone is right in the top of the pack. I could just talk into it, clip it on my shirt, or I can buy a small handle that is designed to go with this unit and just slide it right into the handle and, bring it up and use it to talk just like a regular microphone, and then pass this around to every speaker that needs to speak. Or if I'm using it just on by myself and I need to be hands-free, I can purchase this small lavalier that clips right on my shirt. Benefit of this system, sounds really nice. It's definitely one of those set it and forget it type of ideas where you just put it on and then you don't have to think about it. Downside, not so great for sharing around with people, again, unless you're going to mount it on a handle such as this. But also considering that with COVID times and reducing our interaction and spacing about a room, having to physically pass something to everybody in the room might pose a challenge in that respect. So maybe if you're going to use this type of option, maybe instead you just mount it on a tripod. This has a little interface on the bottom, mounted on a tripod in a location where each speaker comes up to the tripod. Other downside of this system, it is the most expensive of the audio options I'm going to show you tonight. Again, this base system right now, I just took a look on the internet for the current price. It runs anywhere from $150 to $200 for the base system. And then for the extra lavalier, right now that's running about $80. And then for a handle such as this, another $10. So when you factor that all together, again, $150 to $200 for the main system, $80 for the lavalier, and $10 for this, you're looking anywhere, $160 north to $280 for the full system. Might be a little cost prohibitive for some clubs or some individuals. So some more basic options that you might want to consider are some things for the individual, particularly if you're meeting at home and you're attending the meeting remotely. Perhaps a headset. So the first headset I'll show you is a wired headset. Again, this is, let me look up the model, the Plantronics C5220T, if that's not a mouthful, wired headset. It interfaces with the system by USB. Give me just a moment to plug this into the system and I can demonstrate what this sounds like. All right, so here I've transitioned over to the wired headset, again the Plantronics headset. You can see the audio does sound different when I interface in this way. Again, benefit, it's very clear. I can also get the speakers right over my ears so I can hear whatever's happening in the meeting. Downside, I am connected to the computer by a wire, so I can never travel too far from the base system. Also, while this is great for an individual, when looking to get audio in from a group setting, a little limiting, particularly because this is on my face or in front of my head, and then I have to pass it to somebody else. So, may not be the best option for a group setting, but if you're attending a meeting remotely, this might be a great option for you. The next option I'm going to show you is a wireless version. Again, this version is the Logitech H800, retails for about $40 to $50. This, again, connects via wireless that you take a small transmitter, the size of a small USB connector,
interface it into the computer, and then you can move around without the burden of the wire. So give me just a moment and I will demonstrate what this sounds like. All right, so now here we are. Now I'm using the Logitech H800. Again, headset, mounts on my ears, has the microphone right included with it, so I get both the audio from the meeting so I can hear it as well as broadcast my audio into the meeting. But I can move around the room. I don't have to get tied to an area. But just like the other headset, downside is it's really limited to one person. And if you are going to transition this to somebody else, you're likely going to have to wipe it down before you give it to somebody else in the room. So great option if you're attending the meeting yourself or attending the meeting remotely, but if you're in the group that's at the meeting location, something like this may not be the best option for you. Okay, next I'm going to demonstrate an option which I think is my favorite for if I were attending in the group location and I need a microphone to pick up everybody from the group. And that's the idea of using a conference phone speaker. Again, this speaker is the Jabra 510 wireless Bluetooth speaker. Retails for about $150 to $175 when I pulled it up on a couple websites this evening. Benefit of this, it's something just like with a conference phone at your workplace that you can set in the center of the table and it can pick up audio all around it. Added benefit is also a speaker, so anybody who's presenting in or attending your meeting remotely, you can hear the audio coming out. So again, give me just a moment and I will transition over to this speaker. All right, so now I've transitioned over to this wireless conference speaker. Again, benefit here, rather than having to have something on my shirt or something on my head, if I'm at the in-person attendance site at the restaurant or at the community center where you're meeting, benefit of this type of device, for example, if I'm at the in-person place at the restaurant or at the conference center, I can just set it here on the corner of the table near in the center where everybody's meeting, and then I can forget about it. I can move about the room, I can talk, I can present, and as you see, even if I get a little distance away from that speaker, it's still picking me up if you're doing like a good Toastmaster and projecting your voice. But also as other people are attending and they're participating and people are giving maybe a review of my speech, someone attending remotely, I can hear them perfectly fine from this speaker. Out of all the options I've demonstrated tonight for audio, this type of device is my preference for the in-person attendees at the meeting. Why? Not putting anything near somebody's face and then passing around to somebody else. Again, we're trying to limit potential for passing things around. I also get to set it up once and then forget about it. And it also doubles as a speaker for which I can hear anybody else who's presenting remotely. Now, whether you use something like this model I've demonstrated here or another smart speaker that you've seen advertised on the internet or on the television, all those type of devices could work in this scenario. Now, I don't know how well this is going to work, but I also want to demonstrate what this speaker sounds like when it broadcasts audio out. So I've changed the audio back to my small microphone, again, the small microphone I'm wearing here on my shirt, and now I'm going to broadcast some audio out of the speaker, and maybe you can hear what it might sound like to have a speaker present. So hope you'll indulge me for just a moment as I cue up my speech from this year's speech competition. So give me just a moment, and here we go. Good morning, fellow Toastmasters, honored judges, and guests. I wanted to start off today by saying I'm not a quitter, or at least I don't consider myself to be one.
easy for someone to say when things are going well, and you feel as if you're on top of your game. But it becomes much more difficult to maintain that stance when your bag is packed, your hand is firmly gripped on the front door handle, and you're ready to walk out that door. So, although I'd love to share my speech again with you, many of you heard that at this last year's speech competition, but maybe you were able to hear that the speaker has pretty good output, that I can hear it from wherever I am in the room, and it appears to be a really great option. Again, that's why I mentioned of all the devices I've presented tonight for audio, I think this type of device is going to be my favorite and my recommendation to have in the in-person setting in order to broadcast your audio out to the room, as well as to gather the audio of any speakers. And maybe the only thing you really have to focus on is where do you locate this speaker in the room in order to maximize its nearness to everybody in the room. So moving on to the next component, we're going to look at the video out component, both for your remote attendees as well as your in-person attendees. Now your remote attendees, again, probably pretty straightforward, and it's what you all have been doing this past year. And that is watching the video either on a laptop in front of you or perhaps on a smartphone or tablet where you're watching everybody at the meeting on your device. That's a great way to get the video out to your attendees and they can engage, interact with it. But if we now move to that in-person setting where you're having a handful of people that are socially distanced in a community center or a restaurant, all of a sudden getting that video of any remote attendees who might be speaking and presenting to your club starts becoming a little more difficult. Now, of course, you could use what you've been using at home. You could have a laptop placed in an appropriate area at the front of the room, and then everybody sitting around at their chair. Again, they're going to pull up their chair, and in the back of the room or distance from the screen, they can watch. Now, maybe if you have just a handful of attendees, putting them 6 feet apart in that area might work well. But it's going to be a little difficult to see, maybe a little small. So perhaps instead of your monitor on your laptop, you consider a dedicated screen. Maybe this is a screen from a computer, a desktop computer that's a little bigger. Maybe your venue where you meet has a large television or something like that. You interface with the appropriate cable into that television, and you can put the picture of your presenters on the screen. But perhaps the option you want to consider for your club is, in order to maximize how your in-person attendees can see all the content and also enable all of your presenters, whether remote or in person, to share either pictures or a slide presentation, is with something like this. This is a projector, again, a digital projector that can interface this one either with a smartphone or with a computer. Again, I'll bring it a little closer. Has a lens here in the side. It's a little fan. This one also has some speakers and different inputs into the back, including an HDMI cable or a slide presentation from a USB, and has different ways to project out the audio. This one can interface with either the laptop or even with a smartphone. If you give me just a moment, I'm going to set it up and show you why I think this might be a great option for the in-person group at your club. So, give me just a moment to get it set up. All right, so I now have the projector connected, and as you can see, I have it up here on a blank wall. I've transitioned back to the other microphone so I can move around a little bit. But I know this guy looks like a great baker there in the video, showing off his baking skills. But I guess the goal of showing this is just to imagine this was one of your remote attendees attending your meeting and presenting their content here to the group. So imagine they're up here, they're on the screen, and they're presenting their speech. Now everybody else in the room, seated around the room, watching them speak, you could see that you could really interact and feel like this person is present in your room, even though that they're attending remotely. And if instead of the camera facing me, I face the camera back at the audience, maybe my remote attendee can get the benefit of all those other people in attendance at the audience. So as you can see, I have it just stationed here right in front of the computer. We can interface it with the computer either with an HDMI cable or with a, in this case, I just have my file running off of a USB thumb drive. If this is a PowerPoint, I of course could just run my PowerPoint content this way. And although not typical, this one has a built-in battery, which also allows me to run it and move it around the room and not have to keep it focused in one area. This also has a little built-in speaker, which is not ideal. So if I were trying to project the sound of this person presenting, I probably want to engage with that other speaker we looked at earlier. But I think a great option for many clubs who might want to be in a central location and to view their remote speaker, and also give their in-person speakers opportunity to display any pictures, slide presentations, or content they wish to share during their speech. All right, and finally tonight I'm going to discuss some other accessories that your club might want to consider for your in-person site in your meeting, and that is, number one, lighting. When you're in person, it doesn't matter so much, but when you're somebody on camera, it really matters how well you have the lighting set up. Just to emphasize how much difference it makes, if I were in a room with very poor lighting, just like I did there, and I don't have light on my face, it is very hard to see my expressions and to interact as a speaker with my audience. So it is just that important that video is only going to be as good as the lighting in your venue and how well the speaker is lit. And as you can see here in my apartment, I have one half of my face that's much lighter than the other because in this room, all my light is over here on one side. So potential things you might want to look into in order to enhance the lighting of your speaker. If your venue doesn't have great lighting, maybe it's purchasing an external light. For example, this is a ring light. Specifically, this is the UB size 10-inch ring light with tripod. Altogether, the light and the tripod cost me about $30 when I purchased it. Again, benefit of something like this, I can mount it anywhere I need the light. Again, click on that light. So the benefit of this type of light, if I face it here on the speaker, now you can see that shadow starts disappearing from my face, and if I work and balance that light just right, it actually helps and makes me appear better. Other thing I can do with this type of light also allows me to, if I wanted to, instead of having my camera separate over here, it has a mount where I can either put a smartphone or another camera and just mount it right in the center of the light so that when you're facing the camera, you always have great light on you. Another option is to get a dedicated light. This is a light I bought to use with my video blogging series so I can get detail light over something I'm filming. This is the, let me show you what this looks like. This is the VI Gym LED video light. Cost about $24. And for this, again, it looks pretty bright on camera, but the idea, I'd place it on my table or on a tripod and again face it towards my speaker to help eliminate dark spots. If your venue has great lighting, you don't really need to consider these. But if you're in some place that maybe has very off-sided lighting, maybe you do need to consider something like this. Some other basics to consider: if you're using either a webcam like I demonstrated earlier or a video projector, maybe you need another mini tripod to set it on a desk. Again, unlike some large tripod like this, or like this other tripod that I borrowed from my dad about 15 years ago and never returned. You could go for something much smaller, and the two tripods I demonstrated earlier, like I had on the projector, again, this one here that folds up quite nicely to serve as either a handle or a tripod. Again, you can expect to spend anywhere from $10 to $20 on a tripod like this. Last accessory you might need to think about is power, or a power strip. Again, how are you going to power all your equipment? Again, something as simple as a surge protector, or in this case, I have a surge protector that has a built-in 15-foot cord into it. Maybe consider something like this, as well as if you are going to be sharing your presentation or your meeting remotely, do you have access to internet at your meeting location? Because if your location doesn't have internet, how are you going to broadcast out? So you then might have to consider either booking a location that has the internet, or getting a Wi-Fi hotspot, or asking if one of your members can use their tablet or smartphone and help you broadcast out on a Wi-Fi hotspot. And finally, maybe the last thing to consider is some type of gear bag. Again, I picked up this gear bag for about $20, but it holds most all my gear that I need when I go perform my video blogging series, or if I ever do get the chance to visit one of the clubs in my area, I'll definitely use something like this to make sure I can bring all the proper gear when I visit. So that's about all the equipment that I have to demonstrate. I hope you found this useful and helpful to you and your club. Some things to keep in mind. Number one, make sure safety is a priority for your club and is at the top. If it is not safe to meet in person, please do not meet in person as a club. Continue meeting remotely as long as it is necessary until it is safe to meet in person. If you're ever in doubt, consult with your local health authority or your local jurisdiction that your club meets in, and ensure that it is safe to meet as you plan to do. And if you do meet in person, make sure you're taking all the necessary safety precautions, including but not limited to wearing masks, staying distant, sanitizing your hands, and limiting sharing of food and beverages for as long as you need to keep each other safe. Now, after we're out of the pandemic and we no longer have to be as concerned about those items, maybe you can lift some of those restrictions. But as I understand, many clubs are still looking to, when we get to meet back in person, that many see some benefit of being able to still meet in a hybrid fashion, because it can be a great way to use as a recruiting tool for new members, as well as to interact with your own club members who just might not be able to attend that evening. Next thing to remember is, although I've shown a lot of different equipment here, it might not be the best equipment for your club. So please bring a discussion to your club, maybe set up as a table topics or set up as a theme for your next meeting to discuss what are you going to do? Are you going to go hybrid? And if you are, what do you think the best equipment is for your club based on what you've seen from me tonight or what you've seen from other people as you look around? What is the best option? And also consider, as we have for the district in this past year, we've always had a dedicated techie helping to support the meetings. That person has been responsible for ensuring that the application where we're broadcasting the message is set up, the cameras are there, you have someone watching the chat, as well as ensuring all the video equipment is set up. Consider, does your club have someone who is well versed enough and familiar with the equipment in order to run it? If not, jumping to the most advanced technology might not be the best for your club. Also to consider, budget. I've mentioned some rough prices for things on the table here that I've demonstrated tonight. That budget may not be accessible for all clubs, and even if it is, please remember, always consult your members and go through your club's process to make purchases on behalf of your club. Make sure, just as we trained during the district training, that your treasurer and your executive committee is very transparent where money is going, how it's spent, and what the club got out of their dues. Also to consider, where are you going to store this equipment? Does your meeting venue allow you to store equipment there? Or is somebody in your club, maybe an officer, going to need to take the equipment home and store it until their next meeting? Also to consider, and I know this might be a touchy subject, but I'd rather you bring it up front rather than leave it to the end. A lot of this equipment can be used for multiple applications. Is your club going to permit other members to use the equipment when you're not at a club function? I know that might not be the most comfortable conversation to have, but I think it's critical to have to determine, is other use permitted and is the club going to allow it? Because imagine if you start checking out different pieces of equipment to club members, what if that equipment doesn't make it back to your club meeting? Or heaven forbid, what if something happens to that equipment while it's outside the protection of the club? Again, much better to address those items up front than to wait and find out something unexpected when you show up to a club meeting. So that's all the time I have for this evening. I thank you so much for joining me. Again, once again, my name is Paul Brooks. I'm the Vice President of Education for the Gilead-Laverne Toastmasters, your Area A2 Director, and I guess one of your techies for Division 12. If you have any questions, I welcome your questions. You can always reach me at my email, or perhaps, as some clubs have already done, maybe you invite me to one of your upcoming club meetings, and perhaps I can share some ideas and answer some of your questions. And maybe more importantly, help your club to get the conversation started to determine what piece of technology it is that you need and what's going to fit your club best, because not every club needs every piece of technology. The best option is going to be matching the technology with the needs of your club. And when those two things are in alignment, there's nothing your club can't do. So, as I say when I end all my videos in my bakery series on YouTube, I'm going to say, please remember to please stay safe. Please take care of your family, both your family and your Toastmasters family. And I hope to see you next time, either at the Quarantine Bakery or at the next Toastmasters event. Bye for now.